What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Bryan Cranston film, Power Rangers. Power Rangers is the most recent Hollywood reboot telling the story of the old, I believe 1990s was when it started in the United States, Power Rangers show. We had a couple movies in the past, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Turbo, a Power Rangers film, and both of those films are pretty campy and they're really bad, but looking back they are fun. This time they decided to take a more serious look at the characters known as the Power Rangers. Now, the movie's plot doesn't take any crazy turns. It doesn't really move away from the classic Power Rangers idea. The villain is Rita Repulsa, played by Elizabeth Banks. It's not a spoiler, everybody knows. And these 5 teenagers come across these stones or medallions or whatever you want to call them, that then they make them the new team of Power Rangers that are there to defend the universe. Dean Israelite was handed the helm of this new Power Rangers film. It stars Elizabeth Banks, Bryan Cranston, and Bill Hader as the trusty sidekick Alpha 5, along with the 5 new Rangers who I will get to later on in this review. As I said previously, this movie has a more serious tone than the classic Power Rangers always had. The old ones were very campy, really cheesy, and they never really invested very much in a serious storyline. This film does. It takes itself pretty seriously. However, I think a big thing this movie gets right is it doesn't take itself too seriously. It understands that it's telling a story about 5 teenagers who become Power Rangers to defend a universe, and they're talking to a wall and a little robot. It understands the cheesy and the campy aspect of the story, and it utilizes it, and it does it really well. And I think that it has a very good mix between the serious and the old campiness of the original Power Rangers. Elizabeth Banks is the best person in this whole movie as Rita Repulsa. She does a phenomenal job in the role. She really embraces, as I said previously, the cheesy and the campy aspect of this movie. She fulfills it in her villain role, and I really enjoyed her, and I hope if they make sequels, we'll get to see her again, because she was a very entertaining presence on screen, and I don't think that Elizabeth Banks looked at this movie and said, I need to take this extremely seriously, because her performance even has some of that cheesiness to it. It's not just the script, her own performance helps add to it, but in a very good manner. Cranston as Zordon and Bill Hader as Alpha 5 both do a really good job. They're both mostly just voice performances, so there's not much they could do terribly, but I did enjoy both of them. I think Cranston's voice is a very good voice for Zordon, and I think it's good that they made Alpha 5 a little bit less of just a really annoying robot character in this movie. Since Bill Hader's voicing him, he's a little more of a comedic presence while also being a very big help to the Rangers. The direction of the film was surprisingly good. The movie did have some lackluster sequences that when I was watching them I was like, what am I getting myself into with this? And other sequences that looked really cool. And I think that for the most part it handled it well. The fight scenes are pretty decent. I think there is a little bit of a lack of fight scenes in the film. There are a few ones that stand out, but there isn't like that one fight scene that I think fully embraced the old school Power Rangers fighting, which was a little disappointing. Not enough flips in this movie for me personally, but I do think the filming of the fight scenes was really good. I would have just liked to see a few more of them. And to go with that, the pacing of the film surprisingly worked really well, because in this film, a problem with it is you don't get to see the Rangers, is all I'll say, very early on. The movie takes a little while to get to that point. However, even with the lack of that, the actual pacing and the character building that they invest themselves in with some of the characters makes the movie move along at a good pace, and it never feels boring. The movie was also fairly funny. Alpha 5 was a good character, the banter between the Rangers was pretty good, and then the Zords and the suits I actually think look pretty cool when they aren't CGI in the film, which is where I'm now moving into the things that are kind of wrong with this movie. The biggest problem I had with it is the amount of CGI. This movie didn't invest itself enough in anything practical, and if you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I love practical effects, but there are some parts of this movie I understand the CGI. The Zords and any of the big set pieces, the CGI works fine. I totally understand it. However, it's more the smaller scenes. There's scenes where the Rangers are in their suits, the scenes where they're fighting the putties, and the putties are entirely CGI in this film, which are like the little minions of Rita Repulsa. And I think that having more hand-to-hand combat fight sequences between actual present characters would have made for some more engaging fights, because a lot of the fights in this film are entertaining to watch, but they are not necessarily impressive choreography-wise and anything. And you can make fun of the old Power Rangers as much as you want, but the one thing those movies did do, even if it looked horrendously staged, was they took the time to actually have a lot of choreography in the fights. I think the movie could have also benefited from a little bit more cheesiness, especially for the Power Rangers themselves. A lot of the other characters I felt embraced it, but I felt the younger cast of the Power Rangers, they weren't necessarily embracing the cheesiness. And the pacing does do a good job, however I think the amount of time it takes to get to the Rangers themselves is a little long. And the other topic that I think has to be brought up about the film is the acting. The acting along with the character building in the film. As I said, there are a couple characters in this movie that I think get some good background and you genuinely care about them, and there's others that don't. And I think the combination of those two things goes together because they really only involve the Rangers themselves. The side characters in the film, like Alpha and Zordon and Rita Repulsa and anyone else, are all fine. They get enough backstory that you understand where they're coming from, but they aren't like shoving themselves too much in the main plot. And it's the Rangers themselves that suffer here. Now, about me, I used to watch the Power Rangers as a kid. I loved the show. I had a ton of fun watching it. And in the old show, the Blue Ranger was always my favorite. And ironically, in this movie, the Blue Ranger is also my favorite. RJ Cyler plays the Blue Ranger in this film, and he does an amazing job. He was my favorite thing about this whole movie. Him and Elizabeth Banks were fighting for it, and I think both of them are the two highlights of this film that everyone will enjoy because they're both so good. RJ Cyler embraced the Blue Ranger, and they gave him a very, very good backstory in this film. I genuinely cared about the Blue Ranger. I was worried about him in scenes. I wanted to see him succeed. However, the other Rangers didn't really get that. Ludi Lin plays the Black Ranger in the film, and I thought his backstory was solid. It wasn't crazy impressive or new in terms of being a movie cliche or anything, but I thought that it actually worked really well with his character, and I really enjoyed him in the film as well. Not as much as the Blue Ranger, but I did still really like him. It's the other three Rangers to me that suffer heavily in this category in terms of acting and in terms of their backstories. Naomi Scott played the Pink Ranger, Kimberly, and she does a good job as the Pink Ranger. However, her backstory and the cliches involved in her past and where she's come from was really, really generic, and I didn't become attached to her character in any way. And it's the same way for Becky G, who played the Yellow Ranger. She has easily the most generic backstory of any of these characters because it's so vague and bland that I wasn't attached to her. Even though she's a Ranger, I cared, but nowhere near as much as I did about the Blue or the Black Ranger. Dasri Montgomery plays the Red Ranger, and he is the biggest fault of this film for me. I think the actor did a good job as the Red Ranger. I felt him as the leader. I enjoyed him in that role. However, the backstory for the character fell into a lot of high school tropes, heavily. That's the main issue with these three, the Pink, the Yellow, and the Red Ranger. Their backstories are very high school movie tropey, and granted, I did somewhat care about them as Rangers. Their pre-pushed backstory before that wasn't enough to get me attached to them in any way. And I think these three are also the weakest in the acting department, especially Montgomery as the Red Ranger. He feels very wooden in some scenes, and he definitely struggles in certain emotional sequences where others are shining more. However, he's not awful in the whole film. There's just a couple scenes that I felt he wasn't really as emotional or as present as he needed to be, and he felt more wooden when the sequence really called for more excitement and more energy in his performance. I'm gonna give Power Rangers a B-. I think that if you were a fan of the old show, you will very much enjoy this movie. It really feeds into that cheesy and campiness, and it adds some more serious aspects to make it more enjoyable. I really do hope they make sequels to this film. I enjoyed this movie more than I anticipated myself to based on what I saw in trailers, and I think that if you are a fan of superhero films, a fan of action films, or obviously a Power Rangers fan, this movie's for you, and I think that you will have a very good time with it in the movie theater. I'm very sorry that I did not have a video last week. I was out of town and very busy. I am not going to do a video review for Beauty and the Beast. I will have a written review in the description of this film that I wrote if you would like to read that and see what I thought of the movie, my opinions of it. I just don't feel like the movie review at this point, now that it's been out for a week, is really reasonable, especially since I'm trying to get you guys 3 new movie reviews out for this weekend. So I hope you can understand. If you want to know my opinions, check it out in the description down below. As always, guys, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this review, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Power Rangers, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and I hope to see you guys later.